Welcome back to another episode of Unshackled Building Bridges. This week we're doing something a little different. We're bringing you a powerful two-part segment from our visit to Knox College in Galesburg as the Illinois Prison Project led by Renaldo Hudson, Director of Education, and Ronnie Carrasquillo, Community Navigator. We had some deep and honest conversations with these students about justice, reform, humanity, and what it's really like to be in the inside. Now, the atmosphere was relaxed, real, and open. We brought that healing space right into the classroom. Part 2 will be dropped next week. This is part 1. Let's not waste any more time and let's step inside and listen. Come on with me.
That innocent people were also there. And so how do you determine who is innocent and who is guilty? So to me, all of that is connected to why we do this work, why it's important for people to learn people's actual stories. Because you see the news, and it's what we refer to as the dangerous one-sided narrative. They promote the idea of law enforcement to enforce punishment rather than to keep people safe.
It's a blessing that you know exactly what you're doing, young like that. So, Renaldo, I spent you, from what the professor said, you watched the documentary piece of that. So we'll get into that. Somebody have any questions about that? And then Renaldo, you've seen his film, so I'll let Renaldo introduce himself. My name is Ronnie Carrasquillo, and I spent 47 years in the prison system. And my rationale is, why do I do what I do? Is because I came from an impoverished environment and not having, and stuck in a situation where it swarmed me, swallowed me, and then to fight myself out, and I couldn't do it by myself. So my brothers that were around me, they were in the same impacted situation. So we had to use each other to develop each other mentally and learn to stay away from the monotonous. We had a goal which was outside. So we spent decades, and it took decades for us to, some of us come out of where we were at and to accomplish that liberty. So it's not a joke, but it's kind of a joke just sitting here looking at 100 years of incarceration sitting right here. You know, I spent that much time, so.
113.
113, yeah. So
Yeah, that's our math guy. No, I really appreciate like everyone like doing the intro. Like to me, I feel like you have to meet people before you can teach people. And I think too often people just run in and just parachute. Let me tell you all what you need to know. And I'm like, no, I don't practice that. What I share with people is that my story consists of 37 years of incarceration. But prior to that, I was a 19-year-old. And so my story is not just a prison story. It is a part of my trauma. A part of my hardship is that to be a 61-year-old youth, thank you very much. I'm the biggest kid in the world, but I am, and I'm being professional. Man, I'm looking at y'all, and I'm like, y'all need to brand me business, man. Like, cause I be thinking like that. Like, you have to have like, what's your anchor, right? But that's another conversation, right? But I served 37 years. I spent 7 years in the Cook County Jail, 13 years on Illinois death row, and then another 17 years of life without the possibility of parole for a crime I committed. And the reason I always start there is that you can never have a real conversation about criminal justice reform if you don't talk about the guilty. Because the bridge that seems to be the most clogged up is who deserved what, right? And that's a question that we all have to ponder. Like, what does the criminal justice system or people advocating in that space owe to those of us that committed offenses? And then what do we, those of us that have committed offenses, owe back to society, right? And so I do the work because I care, not just because I did time. I'm really invested in the idea of being an action and not just a philosophy. You know, can y'all distinguish the difference? Like a lot of people, you can read a textbook, but it ain't the same as when you get the actual lived experience. And not just as a byword, like lived experience, people should be leading. I'm still looking for the spaces we're leading, right? And I actually hold a role as Director of Education for the Illinois Prison Project, right? And I'm still under the influence of, and I'll say this, not you, Professor, toxic intellectuals, right? And I'm like, wait a minute, what about like the real story? What happened to? Like, and how do we get disconnected so that our humanities got lost with our offenses? I'm responsible for the offense, but I'm not the offense. And I think people have been made to believe you're forever your worst decision. And I don't know about any of y'all, but I know that when I go to the restroom, it stinks. And I think everyone has stinky stuff, right? And if your stinky stuff was put on display like ours was, then you would be caught up, in my opinion. So that's why I do the work, and like I care to wake people up, but I don't judge people for taking the routes that they choose to take. But it'll never be anyone in the space with me where there was a question that I couldn't answer. And I'm saying that not out of pride, but out of fact. I'm so committed to this work that I've yet to be in a space where someone asked me a question that I couldn't hold or couldn't respond to. And I know how to say I don't know.
Well, Ronaldo came from death row. I was 18 years old, sentenced to 200. That's kind of crazy. 200 to 600 year prison sentence. You know, there's no question you can't ask, because a lot of people tell me when you watch that documentary, step outside and don't keep being traumatized. I'm like, I need to see it again and again, because I walked it for 47 years. And even before that, in my childhood, in gang infested environments and violent environments that led me into stuff like that. So don't feel you can't ask a question about whatever it is. It don't bother me at all to answer whatever it is to help you advance where you're trying to go. You know?
And Gilbert?
Yeah.
That's
Hey,
what
I'm sorry. I just want to add, because I think it's an important element to what you're saying. There's a difference, y'all, between wanting to help people transition back and assuming that people are broken. Because what I've learned since I've been home, and I just want to emphasize this, that I've seen more brokenness on the opposite side of the conversation, you know, and we take for granted that those of us with incarceral experience are the ones that need the help.
Yeah.
And I don't subscribe to that idea. I subscribe to the idea that all people, right, are broken and cracks, right? And we've just been made to think we're separate. And crossing the bridge for me is saying to people, excuse me, we're really the same.
Right.
My lived experience is just different. You're living in a world that's congested, and we were put in cells, but we were refined. Now, it is true, the technological stuff is stuff we struggle with, but I just want to make sure, because that can get lost. I don't want anyone to help me. I want people to walk with me. And I think that's just a clear distinction for me is I don't want your pity. I don't want you, no, forget that. Like, if you're going to advocate for me, you're making a mistake. If you're going to advocate with me, now we can make a difference. Because it's reciprocal. And when we clog that up, when we stop that process, we make a mistake. Let me walk you through. And you know this, because y'all know this, and you are a member of the Illinois Prison Project team, right?
Yes.
We just have different roles, right? And so he's an ambassador, he mentioned it briefly. He's one of the new ambassadors for the Illinois Prison Project, where we specifically train formerly incarcerated people to share their stories in a manner that maintains first the respect of their humanity, and then make the connection to the bridge, because we're bridge builders, right? We are in the business of making sure people don't set the bridge on fire, because either way you got to cross back over. So if you let the bridge catch a fire, it's problematic. So anyway, I just want to, sorry for interrupting you, I just want to amplify who we are, or who I represent when I walk in the room. Like, my name is Renaldo Hudson, I'm the Director of Education. I'm not an offender, inmate, right, lost, right? I'm sober intellectually.
Intention.
Questions?
Yeah, so any,
Do we want to begin with questions? How do you all feel? So like we free to ask questions.
Yeah.
So now I'm asking questions. I'm gonna just get it out of the way. So, like I said earlier, I got brothers in and out the system. I don't get to speak, talk to them here and there, So I want to know, like, the thought, like the mental part of it, like, because I don't get to see his face. I get to ask the questions, but I don't get to see mentally, how, like, physically how they're doing. And I want to know, like, does your mindset change? Are you still the same person? Like, are you, even though you're going through the things that you're going through, what's helping you? Like, I don't want to say something's dragging you down, because at the end of the day, you still got to think of the bigger picture. You can't stay down. You got to keep pushing, you got to keep moving, And I want to know, like, what helped y'all get through it? What guided y'all through it? What helped you keep your smile? What kept you up and uplifted? Not what kept you down.
Go ahead, man. There's a lot of different things. It's a different world, it's a different setting, it's a different pressure, it's a different culture. So in my personal case, I can't speak for your brothers or what they're going through. I wouldn't try to speak for them for that. But in my personal case, I was explaining that I came from an environment, violent environment, and ended up in the prison system at a young age. Above me, everything for an attorney to help me, whatever, everything was $50,000 and up. So then the system marginalized, you're so-and-so, you're this or you're that, and wanted to house me in that position. So I started going to school. As I started learning, I realized my brother needed help. Say, man, read this, and then the next one, and the next one. So I don't know what your brothers are doing, but that's what kept me going, is that I had my eye on that front door to get to my family. That was my objective. That front door meant everything, and not that they took my coffee or that they shook me down or they patted me down the wrong way. All that's in that game. And you could be locked in on that or rise above it. So you would look at, like, Ronaldo's titles, educational director, and you would think, how'd you get that spot? Well, he's been practiced that for 30 of his years in the system. I call it a laboratory. Hey, I want to start this program. No. But I want to start this program. Check this program out. No. So we fought against that for the longest, and it's not a joke, but they used to say to me all the time, whose lawyer are you today? I would say, you had a problem, or I say, you have a problem, and I didn't have the problem walking up on him. Hey, you're going to help this guy. We're going to do it this way. So, well, whose lawyer are you trying to be today? I needed this guy to be whole. I needed us to be whole, because things can happen in there that one guy could make something happen and cost everybody. So we were walking peacemakers, all the time, every time, not only from the people that are incarcerated, but the officers who were there also. There many times you have to corner them. Hey, how about this or how about that? So we have, I have all them years of that kind of training. So I pray over your brothers that that's what they're doing in there, is they're being pressured upon, whatever it is, if they see these courses or whatever's in there, and that you're talking to them some kind of way, and you're in college, and I'm sure that they're like, man, my brother's in college doing good. So what you're learning, feed with each other, just like you said, the picture's bigger. The picture's called life, and they try to take our life. So I didn't believe they were gonna take my life, and he didn't believe, oh, you're gonna get my life. Oh, you got life? No, I ain't got life. I don't know what you're talking to. I'm walking out of here. So we're like a walking race, and you could feed that energy to your brothers, and the same thing vice versa. So you have a listening ear, and you know your brothers that when something's bothering them or whatever, you just kind of influence it. A leader is influencing, you just influence them. It's better off if you look at it this way. How about looking at it that way? And that's how we worked on, and it wasn't us changing our lives, but that was my strategy of influencing people. Let's be better.
Yeah. I second everything he said. And like, for me, when I went to prison, I was 19 years old, and I couldn't read or write. And so most of my reactions in my earlier years were animalistic. I was like, you can't beat me. Like, I was approaching everything like, you can't beat me. Like, if you think what? Like, why you say that word? I don't know what that word was, but I feel like I'm offended. And so like mentally, I was still developing. And so I wasn't frightened of the system because I didn't have the ability to comprehend appropriately what was happening to me. It was only when I became more educated and began to realize how traumatic that environment is, how horrible and toxic it is, that I began to become emotionally and crying. Because I'm like, ooh, I gave myself to this really horrible system that don't care about my mental state. I gave myself, away from my family, right? Because of a temporary want that I didn't have capacity to hold, and I try to take. And that's like, so for me, mental health is a major thing in those spaces. I went from, and I admit this, and I hope it's not traumatic to anyone, from being suicidal. So it was hard to scare me with execution because I was trying to kill myself. And I was willing to try to kill myself until I realized that I had a purpose and that I was stronger than my hardest moment. And I think people don't hear that enough. And so one of the things that I did inside was I began to really work on me. And as I began to work on me, what I realized, the things around me were less of an influence on me, if that makes sense. Because I'm like, hey, wait a minute, like, you stink, and you haven't taken a bath, and you haven't, and I don't mean to be vulgar, you know what I mean? And you, obviously, you're not that smart, and you're in charge of me. Like, that started to bother me. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't that smart. Hey, what if you, and so I started suggesting to staff, hey, what if you did things this way? Right? And before you know it, I was controlling the environment. And it wasn't manipulation, it was education. Like, the better educated you are, like, if you don't like what's happening, then learn all the rules of what you don't like. And then you can start to disassemble that stuff. Right? Be like, oh, but you can't disassemble, you can't go up against a war, a battle, and you don't even know the rules of engagement. You don't even know what they have in their arsenal. And that's what me and Ronnie will call ourselves the two R's that represent the three R's, right? Is they were saying to us that there was nothing redeemable about us because of our past. And I began to say to myself, I'm more than my worst decision. And so my mentality began to be, while I was on death row, I recognized, oh, I'm more valuable than them exterminating me. Like, if they execute me, they're gonna execute a developed person, not just a person that committed an offense. So I started to strive to make them feel ashamed of killing me, even though I committed the act of, and I don't say that lightly or dismissively. I always try to remember the humanity of Mr. Folk Peterson, because who I am today cost him his life. And that's why I will never not do this work. That's why I would never not stand in front of people and say to them, this is the commitment that I've made to this work. I ain't gonna kill you, Fly, but you better quit playing with me, right? You know what I mean? Because I'm committed to peace. Like, the flagging on my nerve, but I ain't gonna stick them out. But that's the point, is you have to be consciously thinking about every act that you commit. And so I know this is a long answer, I'm sorry, but I'm saying my mentality was predicated around, man, Ronnie might be having a bad day. I'm just using him as an example. I need to have a good moment. And holler, hey, Ronnie, what's going on? And people would hear me and him reacting in peace, and they would start to follow that. And so we learned, oh, we are the influences. So if I allow the system to make me act stupid, guess what's gonna happen all around me to the people that's watching me? They're gonna act stupid. Yeah.
Interesting.
I guess the second kind of what we were talking about, what is this, Ron? You mentioned this in your film. It's like how can you prove remorse? And it's like by living like that better life. So in that sense, do you feel that you guys are a product of living that remorse? Like that reform? Are you living, I know there's probably, you guys have a goal, you guys still want to go somewhere. But right now on your journey of this project, what you're doing, do you feel that you are living that life of remorse and betterment?
It's an everyday thing. My first, I was 18 years old when I came in the system. So coming from the environment I was in, by the time probably 12 years old, you're seeing 10 deaths of children around you. You're a child yourself. So you get involved thinking you'll fix it and you just put yourself in that spot. So my first maybe 8 years for the judge to say, you have 600 years. Like I said, I don't know the system. What's that mean? It didn't mean nothing. I had more worries about, I gotta go back to this gallery and bang with these guys over here. I was a street gang leader, so I was a target at all times. So I'm got a wound that you would never believe, but I still had to live that life at the same time. They're calling me ignorant, stupid like that. So then when you realize that, it gets you mad. I mean, I'm ignorant. So I grew up playing baseball as a kid. So when I went to high school, back in the day, they didn't have that GPA to go to get into sports and all that. So I was excused from other classes. I was go to the gym and train all day. So I was denied mental growth. But spiritual, who knows about God? Yeah, I know God, like everybody. So all I was out of balance. I was just physical, everything physical. So everything that came at me was physical. Street gang life, physical. That's all I knew. And not realizing that as things come wrong against you in life, and it's biblically that you're gonna have tribulations. I didn't know how to respond to it. My response was, I'll smash you. I'll annihilate you. And everybody around me, that was my environment. So I landed in that system. So once that happened, and I look around the galleries and there's 30 up there, all murder. I said, man, we tore our neighborhood up. We tore our lives up. Hey man, you need to stop that. And if you see in that documentary, the guy that walks up and he said it was gonna shake my hand, and he knew I was in that place. We had killed his brother, my friends of mine. Now here we are, I'm going to shake his hand. Hey, we need to stop this. So here you got life, I got life. We need to stop this. And then when I looked up, when I was coming home and they were going to my hearings or the courthouse, and all these people that were going, they were not basically my friends. These were enemies that 30 years ago tried to kill me, 40 years ago. So everybody that we finally had cultural committees and sat down and broke bread and became human with each other, I looked up, I'm like, wow, this is a flip of the switch that the enemy came to get. We want him out now. This guy been helping us change our lives, and we helped each other like that, and it turned like that. That's remorse in action. Did I stop that spirit of, and work for, like when he was home, not to put an example out, we were from a street gang, he would come, hey, what you want me to do? Go be a family man, stop. Go take care of your kids, go live your life. You want me to do nothing? No, stop that.
True story.
Stop that. We don't need to be doing that. Stop that. And man, you a punk now. No, I'm not a punk now. You know, we just have to stop that. So that's the remorse in action. And then when you go to the boards or to the judge, they want some theoretical, I'm sorry every day. And you can't bring back, it doesn't do anything like that. It's a personal, man, I messed up that bad. So now that transforms you to be, you're not gonna catch me like that again. I'm not gonna be that ignorant person again. You're not gonna catch me doing it again. Everything you catch me doing or somebody, man, Ronnie help me do that, Ronnie help me do that. If you did me wrong, I chalk it up. You lose $1 sometime in the store, right? You lose it, chalk it up, bad business, okay, and keep going, you know?
Yeah. No, that is so it. Like, for me, like, I actually reconnected to my humanity. And so I wasn't so much under the idea of remorse in the way society presents. You showing remorse by crying about what you did. I cried about the loss, not about what I did. Because I didn't have the ability in those moments in the beginning to even appreciate the criminality of my conduct, nor to conform myself to the requirements of the law. And so, like, when you start coming from that perspective, you're coming from a different lens. And so for me, it was when I was on death row, I saw that everybody was parted off into their own little, I'm waiting to die. And so to say to someone, okay, before you die, will you say you're sorry? It's questionable. is like, and I watched 12 people go to their execution during my 13 years on death row. And so what made me feel the most remorse wasn't the thought of dying, but when I watched family members who had experienced crime cry, and victims and was so resentful and bitter, that's what made me cry. Like, oh my God, am I responsible for making this person become this dark thing? And that's not to minimize how people feel, but I realized I wanted to undo that. I couldn't undo what I did, but I wanted to be a part of, I want to undo that harm. I couldn't undo what I did, but I wanted to be a part of, I want to undo that harm. I want people to know that there are people that are remorseful, but we're not going to pretend to be, oh, I'm sorry, prison boy, but doing the work behind the wall that people couldn't see. Like people couldn't see when I went on the death row yard and I had studied in psychology touch therapy. And I realized, man, the rules of engagement in prison is you don't touch each other. And so I started hugging guys on death row, right? And they started smiling just like you just smiled, right? They're like, dang, man, I ain't felt this way in a minute. I'm like, all right, let me go now. You getting a little... I'm serious, right? And so I realized the power of it. And so I did this for like 3 months. And then one day I went to the yard and I just went straight to the weight pile. And I didn't hug nobody and I was lifting the weights. But I was watching everybody and I noticed no one was working out. And they was like, what's wrong? No. And so finally, a brother that was on death row said, oh no, I heard he literally said, no. And so finally, a brother that was on death row said, I don't know, I heard he literally said, I don't know about y'all, but I'm gonna get my And I was like, man, Lord, thank you for showing me the humanity. To me, that's the remorse, that we soften hard hearts. And it started with us. And so for me, when I think about remorse, it's like, how do I touch the people that's in the hardest position? Because once we started to thaw out, because you'd be frozen in those spaces, right? And then your humanity is awakened, and you say, ooh, I am sorry for being that person, but I can't change what happened. But I can change what happened moving forward. So to me, it's the work forward, right, that is the true manifestation of the act of remorse and not what's defined by someone out of some theory. Like when the brothers, like we was teasing earlier, I was in the cell and I was having a conversation with Killer and Murder. And they were literally cellmates and they were fighting, like Killer, like, no, you better tell Murder quit messing with me. I'm like, Killer, his name is Murder. Like, what am I gonna tell him? Y'all have the same name. But they were angry and they were broken. And they needed somebody to interrupt that. And so to me, like remorse is that interrupting what society has accepted as norm. And our criminal legal system want people to be normal in an abnormal environment. Won't you conduct yourself accordingly? But you treat me like an animal. And you telling me to act normal? I'm forced to be what is in the space. The space is not humanized. It doesn't promote humanity. It promotes punitive action. Shut up. Get in line. Go to bed. Shower. Phone. Child. I'm a dependent for years and years and years. At some point, I used to hear crying in the late nights on death row. I shouldn't be here. I ain't supposed to be here. And then you discover that innocent people were also there. And so how do you determine who is innocent and who is guilty? So to me, all of that is connected to why we do this work, why it's important for people to learn people's actual stories. Because you see the news, and it's what we refer to as the dangerous one-sided narrative. They promote the idea of to enforce punishment rather than to keep people safe. You're supposed to serve that, both the guilty and the innocent. And that's not the way our system is being ran or pushed at this point.
You had talked about earlier the idea that trauma, it didn't hit you until you got in and very deep into your incarceration. The reason that struck me is because, well, I know trauma, and I've been through a lot, and like that feeling where you don't really know that a thing is traumatic. Like there's like that click makes you think, okay, no, this is trauma. Like and up until then, I call it a numbness. It's numb. It's just like, oh well, I guess you know that saying, God gives you what you can handle. That has been a lot of how my life has gone. And so it's not that I'm angry with God, it's that whether God is she, her, him, whoever, whatever, like it's so much that I feel like, you know, sometimes trauma upon trauma, you just kind of sink into it, and that's what I call numbness. But when did you see the light, and also was there a time where you just like, what was the spark that told you this is trauma, this needs to stop?
Yeah, when I was disinvited to a death row party, that's when it hit me. It was something wrong with me. I'm serious. Like, we used to celebrate another life surviving death row, and so my buddies went, like, one day, instead of coming to the yard standing there, I'm like, where are the guys? I was on the yard by myself. I was like, hey, this is not normal. And when I went back, they would give us a shower. My buddy was in the shower next. He was in the one, individual showers. And I'm like, where's everybody? He's like, man, we was at so-and-so's 1 year celebration. And I was like, why y'all didn't tell me? He said, Nado, don't nobody want to be around you. I'm like, and I really mean this, y'all. Like, how do you go from be like, what do you mean don't nobody want to be around me? I'm one of the guys. And they was like, you're unstable. I'm unstable. People don't know if you're gonna punch them or hug them. Right? Like you're unstable, dude. And it hit me. I had became the product of what I had been exposed to. I had became violent, unstable, and those are things that, see, people think of violence as only in physical, but the way you think can be violent. Like, to have a suicidal thought is vital, it's violent. Because you're saying, I'm okay with harming myself, which means you are a threat to others around you. And like, people don't talk about that, right? And so I was like, oh, they see the real me in this moment. And that person was the most dangerous person, this trauma-soaked person that's walking around without relief. And so I began to do what I refer to as the flushing theory, is stuff that felt heavy to me, I would say it out loud. You fight thoughts with words, not words, right? And so if I had a thought, I'm like, man, you should kill yourself. I'm like, but I have so much more to give. I would start having, I promise y'all, I started having conversations with myself and be like, wait a minute, you're valuable to that. If no one else cared anything about you, Renaldo, you're beautiful. Like, and I was looking in the mirror, I'm like, hey, you got a big nose. How you beautiful? I'm like, but it's beautiful. I really began to self-medicate with words. And so that's how I began, right? Because they'll give you medication to try to level your chemical, like, and get into that science. I know I'm a little smarter than I look, and I can get into that.
I'll follow up. It's this flushing theory. Honestly, I'll get a little personal here, but because you talked about suicidal thoughts, like I had an experience a year ago where, like, you also talked about, like, you know, that point of time where you're just like, okay, well, if I can go this low to, like, basically want to end my life, like, I need to fix it, because I'm not just, you know, for me, that was one friend saying, you're not just harming yourself, you're also harming me. This is a person I love very much. And so, like, that was a time on that dock, that was the time. It's like, you know, you want the pain to stop, but you don't want your life to stop.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little bit ironic, like, where you get the meaning for life when you want it to stop.
Yeah, I just think it's important that we want to have people to talk to. Like, and I know this is turning a little, and I think it's important, y'all. Like, we have to always not allow ourselves to be cornered and hidden in a corner. And like, if you're having any of those thoughts, always reach out to someone, right? Call a professor. I'm just serious. Like, call someone and say, hey, I'm feeling this thing, right? Because what happens in prison is they don't create space for it. We created that space, and that's what makes our ministry so important, because we went from the gang stuff to the lived community philosophy. Like, everybody in my family now, not just because you folks. Like, you know, that's I lean, right? But then when I started seeing that the same pain was crossing all those gang lines, like, wait a minute, right? One of my best friends on death row was a skinhead, right? And I used to like, I can't stand you, colored man. Like, he said a different word. And I'd be like, I can't stand you, hillbilly. And so we used to be going back and forth, but then we had this common thread, which was they wanted to execute us both. And they didn't care about our racial concepts or disagreements. And so we started buddying up, be like, okay, what can we do to make sure we fight them when they're not giving us what we need? And I'm saying that to say, like, trauma and hardship produces strange bed partners. And if you can begin to recognize, like, the humanity of each other, to be able to see what's happening in the world and not ignore it, but also not be drowned by it. And that's what was happening in prison. Prison is so much trauma, it's so much hardship. Everyone has a story. Like, to be clear, like, my story to me is unique, it's powerful, it's a witness of resilience. It's a witness of, like, if you never give up, look what could potentially happen. But it's also saturated with compound loss, compound, right? I just don't sit in it anymore. I used to sit in it and be like, and you can become comfortable in dark stuff. That's another thing you have to understand. Like, I'm comfortable here, right? I'm familiar with that. That's what prison does to you as well. It makes abnormal stuff become normalized. That's why I so thank you for bringing us so that we can really, like, both. If y'all recognize this or not, I'm gonna say it to you. I both get healing from this. Not just from sharing, but sharing the space. And now it's out of me. I don't have to keep holding it. And that's the key. It's like, put your stuff out there. And I promise y'all can't ask a question that'll shame us. You know, that's gonna trigger you. No, would trigger me if I was back in that cell. Now I get to go, like, I'm going to get me some pizza a little later. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to do some happy stuff. So,
and sit in Lincoln's chair. All right. Do you think, how are you all feeling? Do you need a break, or should we just keep going? So we have class till about like 12:25, right? And then we
break.
have to go to our next thing. Do you want to take a little break? Or?
I'm okay, whatever everybody
How
wants
does
to do.
everybody feel?
Ronnie seen it all from the inside walls. Gil got a vision that still stands tall. We don't beg for seats, we build our own. Bridge by bridge, we're bringing